Nancy Pelosi today desperately trying to keep control of her caucus. The House Speaker reportedly telling members in a closed-door meeting that any vote against the $4.5 billion supplemental border funding bill would be a vote for the president. Pelosi's comments coming a day after she again made it clear Democrats' desires for the border.
In terms of interior enforcement, what is the what's the point? A violation of status is not a reason for deportation. What we need there is comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship.
Our next guest says Dems in Congress have allowed the border crisis to explode. Joining me now is Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Melissa, good to be with you.
What's the situation like right now?
We're being overrun and overwhelmed, Melissa. In the last 3 weeks, the last report I don't have the current week, but in the last 3 weeks, 45,000 people have been apprehended in Texas. Now, if we catch 1 out of every 4, and there's no science to that, law enforcement, some will say 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 10. Take the low number, 1 out of every 4. That means another, 100,000 came in or more. In addition to that 45,000, earlier, I was watching your interview earlier, and you're talking about the cost of a tube of toothpaste.
Yeah.
No, you could get a tube of toothpaste for one person. When you say, well, you don't need the government to do that. When you have, and out of those 45,000, Melissa, maybe 30,000 family units. When you have 30,000 families crossing the border illegally every week, and you take them into a facility that was meant to hold 4,000 maybe total, and now we have 3 times as many, and you're setting up 3 meals a day, you're setting up some education requirements, you're setting up hygiene, all of this issue. The Border Patrol was not designed to do that. And the Democrats, by not funding the barrier and allowing these people to come in, they're the cause for anything that's happening to these children. It's not Border Patrol's fault. It's not President Donald Trump's fault. It's the Democrats who have allowed this to get so far out of control that these bad stories are happening. First of all, the parents shouldn't let their kids cross the border illegally like this, who are putting them in harm's way. Secondly, the Democrats will say, well, just let them go. Look, we don't know if the adults with them are really their parents. Some could be sex trafficking. We just don't know.
Okay.
Should we just let them out on the streets?
All of those things are accurate, but to be fair, it is both Democrats and Republicans in Congress
who have Republicans.
They've ignored this They've ignored this problem for years and years. We have needed comprehensive immigration reform.
We have.
For a very long time, and everyone who hasn't participated is to blame, which raises the question, and this is what I was saying earlier, you can't wait for anyone in Congress to do anything at this point because they've failed to act for so long. I appreciate the position you're in. You have people dying at your border, and you are taking the blame for it in Texas as the eyes of America come upon you.
We're not taking the blame for it. Let me tell you what. We're not taking the blame for it, Melissa.
And look, don't want it to happen. Can I say that? You don't want it to happen.
Well, of course we don't want it to happen, but we're not taking the blame for it. Well, look, we're just sending an additional 1,000 Guard members to the border. We just announced that on Friday. That's in addition to the 1,000 we have here. As Lieutenant Governor, I put in our budget $2.5 billion of Texas taxpayer money to do things that the federal government won't do. And look, you are right. In the past, just go back, this century. Go back to these 19 years. Both parties have had a chance to correct it. You're absolutely right. And I blame both parties. However, we have not been in a crisis like this before, and this has been going on. And remember, Melissa, about 3 months ago, the Pelosi and the Democrats were ignoring it. They're saying, well, there is no crisis.
There's no crisis. No. Now everybody
it's been a crisis.
Let me ask you, because I don't want to run out of time, because everyone agrees now there is a crisis, and everyone way far away in Washington is blaming each other and the other side. I ask you honestly, if tonight they don't get together because the Senate has a bipartisan bill, the House has a Democratic bill, everybody's fighting over the details. If they aren't able to come together and get something done before the holiday, what in the world are you guys going to do down there?
Well, look, here's what we do. Here's what Texas always does. What we're doing now. We stand up and do the right thing for people. We stand up and invest our taxpayers' money where the Democrats won't do it. We're doing everything we can. We've added 500 troopers to border security. We've added a Texas Ranger company, thousands of cameras on the border. We're doing more on the border than the Democrats will allow the president to do. The boats, the gunboats on the water, Texas owns them, not the federal government. So we're doing everything because we're Texas, and we will do it. But here's the line, Melissa, when you just said it, the Senate has a bipartisan bill. and the House has a Democrat bill. This has to be a bipartisan effort. We need legal immigration reform. We need asylum reform. We need barriers on the border. Fortunately, Mexico is stepping up. By the way, that 45,000 I told you, that's down about 18%, but it's still 45,000. And just recently, not only did Mexico send about 5,000 to their border, they sent 15,000 to our border.
I don't want to run out of time. Let me ask you,
about time.
If either of these things pass tonight, how much of a help is that, or are you still in really deep trouble?
Look, we're going to be in deep trouble until we put a wall up across most of the border. We don't need it across all 1,200 miles that Texas has with Mexico, but we need it in key areas, particularly from Brownsville to Laredo. That's where 65%
But you need more than
of
that,
are coming
too.
in.
You need reform to the legal system. You need more money for support. I mean, there's a lot of things that it's going to take to solve this problem.
But the first time, Melissa, we've had a lot of flooding and hurricanes in Texas, in the last couple of years. I remember a story from my mom years ago when she was still alive, and she called and said, Dan, I've got water in the kitchen everywhere, and what do? I'm worried about my tile, I'm worried about my cabinets. I said, Mom, we have to stop the leak. The first thing we have to do is stop the leak. I can't repair everything until we stop the leak. We have not stopped the leak, Melissa, and it's time that the Democrats and the Republicans work together. Asylum reform, the barrier up will keep people from coming in, the cooperation from Mexico. We cannot absorb 1 million people coming in here illegally, which we're on target for this year compared to about 450,000 in the past. And secondly, remember, if we get 1 out of every 4 and 1 million we apprehend, that means 3 million came in we didn't apprehend, because we don't have enough people everywhere on the border. So right now, yes, it's been both parties' fault for a long time, but for this crisis right now, the Democrats have caused it. They're the ones who are letting it happen. Anything that happens to a child is their fault, and it's on them.
And the American people just want to see it fixed. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
I got you. And so do Texans.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you.
Up next, the radical left's policies leaving California, wow, in a state of despair. Look at that. We'll have more on that when we return.